There's nothing quite like a party full of a bunch of millionaires kissing one another's asses to remind you why you can't stand those kinds of people. Let's get started. Aloha, everybody. Andrew Fantasia here. Welcome to Thumb Together TV. Today we're going to be talking about Succession Season 4, Episode 7, Tailgate Party Together. As usual, if you enjoyed this video, please feel free to give it a thumbs up, give some love to that subscribe button as well, ring the bell, and hey, if you're a fantasy fan or you have a fantasy fan in your life, guess what? I'm a fantasy fan, and I'm also a fantasy man because I wrote a fantasy man. That's right, I wrote a fantasy novel series called We Were Wizards, and these are the first two books in the series, which are available right now on Amazon.com all over the world, and they come in hardcover, they come in softcover, and they come in ebook cover. You can get We Were Wizards at a link in the description below. Check it out. If you love Lord of the Rings, or you love Star Wars, or you love all that kinds of fun stuff, you're going to find it here. There's magic, there's wizards, there's big sapphires and wizard staffs and everything. It's a colorful, fun, crazy adventure, and I had a hell of a great time writing it, and there are many more to come in this series. So check it out at the link below. Leave a comment and maybe even a review once you pick it up and read it, because that helps me out a lot too. Now it's time to talk about the tailgate party that happened here. Well, this kind of started off as a really slow episode, if we're being honest. It started off just with a lot of little bits and pieces happening, such as Greg firing a bunch of poor folks from Waystar Royco, and this really impromptu lunch meeting between the four Roy siblings, which it's the kind of thing that you see a lot on this show. And it always irks me as a viewer, especially as an Italian man who appreciates good food. But the Roy kids, they go to a lot of these restaurants and they sit down and they just start talking shop, and then they finish talking shop and they leave, and it's been 2 minutes and they didn't even eat. And it's like, why did you come to a restaurant, man? Kendall, would it kill you to just pause and breathe for like 5 minutes and eat a croissant? Would it really be so bad? Thankfully, this restaurant scene does give us my favorite quote of the week, and that quote was spoken by Connor Roy when he's talking about how he has been visiting their father's corpse in preparation for the funeral and spending a lot of time around the casket. And Connor comments thusly, "The weird thing, honestly, is how much he's not there. It's consoling." What a terrific, just subtle little line that speaks so many volumes about how terrible a father Logan Roy was, as if we needed a reminder. Speaking of reminders, it's nice to get a reminder for us, the viewers, and for Kendall himself, that he kind of has an ex-wife and children that he's supposedly supporting. So it's nice to see Rava come back to gently nudge Kendall and be like, hey, you know you have two kids who don't see their father anymore because he's off doing God knows what, right? And in classic Walter White fashion, Kendall says how everything he's doing for them, to save them and save the world. And it rings so hollow and just so pathetic that you can't help but look at Kendall's kids, even though they're very, very privileged kids. You can't help but look at them with pity and think they're going to grow up with some issues because Daddy-O was never around with the tissues. And after all these bits and bobs transpired, it led into the main chunk of the episode, which was the titular tailgate party, where you've got a bunch of very wealthy people standing around, placing bets on how the upcoming election is going to pan out, all the while kissing ass and making plans to kiss more ass in the near future. We get another great Connor Willa moment, and those two are slowly stealing my heart as this season has progressed, because Roman is trying to sweep Connor under the rug, and that rug is thousands of miles away in the Middle East, where they're just trying to ship Connor off so he's out of the way and he doesn't have to be part of this political machine anymore. And it's Willa who says, you know, why don't we not do that? Because that doesn't sound fun, and we like being here, and this is our home. And Connor stands up to Roman and says, Willa is the only person at this party who doesn't think I'm a joke, so I'm going to listen to her. Yeah, it's about time. Really, it's about time. Give the money to Willa. Give that lady all the money. That's it. She's the one I'm rooting for at the end of all this. Then, of course, Madsen and his slimy Viking homies roll up into the party, and for some reason, Madsen decided to show up to this party dressed like Supreme Leader Snoke, and he proceeds to be an ass and to continue collaborating with Shiv behind the scenes. But we learn an interesting tidbit about Gojo. Namely, they should change their name to Stop Joe because that's a bit more representative of the kind of business model they're running. Because it turns out all the numbers of all the users that they claim they have in places like, say, India would only theoretically make sense if there were two Indias, according to Mattson himself. So somebody is fudging the numbers. There's a lot of bots involved. Doesn't surprise me. Doesn't surprise anybody. We know how tech companies work in the real world. Why should Gojo be any different? So now all of a sudden, Shiv has learned she may have set up shop in a burning house. And we start to see why Mattson is so desperate to make this Waystar buy is because he wants the glamour and sparkle of the buyout to quietly hide the scandal of the fudge numbers. Would that even work? I don't know, maybe. Companies have gotten away with worse things. And now that that's out in the open, Siobhan's plans suddenly take a nosedive. And that nosedive continues because we end the episode with her stepping out onto the balcony and having what might be the most frank, hard-on-the-sleeve conversation that two characters on Succession have ever had. And Tom and Shiv air out their grievances to one another to the point where they are both just a tearful mess at the end of it all, because the truth comes out, and the truth, when it comes to the Roy family, is usually ugly. Special thanks to my friend Nessa for bringing this to my attention, but apparently there's a theory going around involving Tom's cell phone, because all the other characters on the show use iPhones except for Tom, who uses an Android. According to what my friend told me, Apple has this very petty regulation in their contracts that if you are going to have your characters in movies and TV shows using Apple iPhones, they can't be villainous characters. That's right. Apparently this is something that came out in the open after Knives Out. Rian Johnson was not allowed to give the killer's character an iPhone because of this rule. So every character in Knives Out has an iPhone except the killer. That to me, Apple, come on, let's be real. Nobody's going to watch things and say, oh, that bad person in that movie has an iPhone, so I'm not buying that anymore. That is never going to happen. Nobody is going to behave that way. Calm down, put on your big boy pants, and start focusing on real problems. And second of all, I can promise you this, Apple executives, no villain in the history of television or film has ever been as villainous as the greedy billionaires who have run and continue to run your company. There you go. It is what it is. And also, third of all, everybody on Succession is a villain at the end of the day, except maybe Willa. So that's a moot point as far as I'm concerned. You shot yourself in the foot here, Apple, because all these people are despicable and I want nothing to do with them, regardless of what phone they have. But yeah, Tailgate Party ends on kind of a cliffhanger as this continuing looming presence of this election gets closer and closer. I thought we were going to see the results of that tonight, but we didn't. And also a thing that's looming on the horizon is Logan's funeral, which for a while I thought we weren't going to see because we just kept steamrolling ahead after his death. But they keep talking about the upcoming funeral, and Roman has kind of called dibs on being a person to speak at the funeral. He clearly wants to, but he won't say he wants to because he's a Roy. So I'm glad that both of those things are these sort of presences that we can look forward to as the driving events that are going to culminate this fourth and final season of the show. It just helps to have that waypoint as an audience. And I hope the final episode is the funeral, because that just seems like a epic place for all of this to just come out in the open and finally reach its conclusion. But that was Tailgate Party. And man, that Tom Siobhan scene, that's going to go down in history. That's going to be a big one that we're going to be talking about for many, many years. I can't wait for these final 3 episodes. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Once again, you can click the link below if you want to buy We Were Wizards on Amazon. And until next time, my friends, adios.